Amateur wrestling and professional wrestling have more in common than you might think at first glance. Sure, pro wrestling is definitely the mutated bastard offspring, but there's still quite a bit of family resemblance that trickled all the way down to the illegitimate love child that it had with theater. Now, just to scratch the surface, let's just focus on one particular aspect of their shared family history. And no better place to start than the beginning, because today, Dave knows the top 5 starting positions in wrestling. In amateur wrestling, depending on the style and rules, there are many ways to begin a match. Some start with both wrestlers on equal footing, while others have the wrestlers starting in different positions, both with their own advantages and disadvantages. And some can be a little awkward. Now I know, isn't a starting position in pro wrestling just two meatheads mean-mugging each other when the bell rings? Well, yes, but also no. In professional wrestling, if you remember my video on Chain, a starting position is what creates the sequence. Now this can happen several times throughout the match. It's not just at the beginning, it's whenever a new chain begins. So because pro wrestling is fake, a string of maneuvers doesn't end just because someone won the match, like it does in amateur wrestling. In professional wrestling, a sequence ends when the choreography just runs out. And then you go into a rest maneuver, take a pause, punch for a bit, whatever, and then you repeat this cycle all the way until the finish. Now you could start a chain with any move if you really want to, but today I want to focus on my top 5 favorite fundamental holds that are great for starting a chain, but still somehow get taken for granted. Number 5, the Wast Lock. Standing front or rear, the Wast Lock is one of the most versatile moves in all of wrestling. First off, it's fairly intuitive that if you want to manhandle your opponent, you're gonna reach for center mass. And also, by adding a simple takedown, you get the middle road to traverse all kinds of different holds. And with both wrestlers heads side by side, this is a great time to deliver quick messages for some easy communication. So whether one wrestler is prompting his opponent for the next coming sequence, or if there's a change in plans, or if it's more of an on-the-fly chain, they can communicate that quickly, and they have some decent coverage to make sure the audience can't see it. And also visually speaking, if two wrestlers are of similar size, it would make sense that they would lock up in this manner. However, if there is a size discrepancy, it is also a great way to showcase how much more dominant one wrestler is over his smaller opponent. And finally, the Wast Lock is a great direct route, straight into Suplex City. German, belly to belly, belly to back, it doesn't matter. The Wast Lock was born as a straightaway into one of the most versatile and fundamental moves in any wrestler's arsenal, the suplex. Proving that it's never a waste to start things off with the Wast Lock. Next up, the wrist lock. Jerry Lawler has said that some wrestlers can't tell the difference between a wrist lock and a wristwatch. Unfortunately, there are more than a few wrestlers out there who have made a career with that possibly being true. But just because there are those who do things the easy way does not mean that there aren't plenty of wrestlers out there who still do things the right way. And the wrist lock is one of the best moves to learn if you want to do just that. Now it can be used in conjunction with other moves like the arm bar, but it is a great and effective move all on its own. First off, visually, it's a great move to wrench down on, especially if the opponent starts wriggling and flaring out their fingers. And even though it can be made to look quite painful, it doesn't hurt at all, which is exactly the kind of thing pro wrestling is all about. Also, whether you're trying to manipulate just a wrist or the entire arm, you can lead your opponent pretty much anywhere in the ring, but he still gets the freedom to be able to move freely with the rest of his limbs. For example, if you were put into a wrist lock, you can flip forward, roll through, kip up, side heel kick, or even just reverse it into a wrist lock of your own. And now you've given your opponent all those options and the cycle can repeat, which is exactly what Chain is all about. Now, if you're giving a wrist lock, well, you have a lot of moves to choose from yourself. You could follow it up with a variety of strikes or throw them around in any manner of different ways. You could even just throw them into the ropes or turnbuckle. And you can also take things to the ground for any number of great arm submission holds. And all this can be done with the simple wrist lock. Number 3, the hammer lock. Similar to the wrist lock, this is all about arm control. But while they accomplish many of the same goals, the hammer lock is superior in several ways. Now they both look painful, even though they aren't. However, the hammer lock can be made to be painful very easily. The hammer lock is a hold that's used outside of professional wrestling all the time by everyone from professional fighters all the way to police officers. And it's used to do a lot of things, from restrain an opponent all the way to actually injuring them. Because the move has a very effective real-life counterpart, it goes into the squared circle with a lot of street cred. And since the wrestlers are a lot closer than with the wrist lock, this also opens up the avenue for, once again, great communication. And that's why my third pick is the humble hammer lock. Number 2 on my list, the headlock. While it is a common rest hold and ground maneuver, I want to particularly focus on the standing and front variety. It's one of the most basic moves employed by mean older brothers and bullies in TV shows and movies because it is such an obvious visual sign of dominance. Plus, going for the head is just common sense. If you're giving a headlock, you could always take things down to the ground for a submission, or you could go into a bulldog, or even standing switch and give yourself a few more options. Well, if you're in a headlock, you have a lot of choices too. You could just shove your opponent off into the ropes and start a running exchange, or you can just slip out of it and then hit your opponent with any variety of moves. That way, your opponent actually gets an opportunity to look justifiably caught off guard. Spinning toe holds, atomic drops, double leg takedowns, belly to back suplexes, northern light suplexes, and so much more are all at your disposal when you're in a headlock. And also, this gives some great coverage for communication. If your head is tucked away in your opponent's side and under his arm, it gives great coverage to make sure that the audience and camera can't see you talking. However, your opponent is a little exposed if he wants to respond back to you. And since this is also a rest hold, there's no time sensitivity. You can actually deliver longer messages if you need to. And as Paul Heyman has mentioned, if done properly and if the move is properly protected, you could even see this move taking down the title at WrestleMania. And that brings us to my top pick. What is my favorite starting position move in all of pro wrestling? The bread and butter of any professional wrestler's moveset, especially when it comes to starting positions, the collar and elbow tie-up. Sure, this is probably the most common starting position in all of pro wrestling, but you know what? There are a lot of good reasons for that. First off, it can look explosive when two guys run at each other from out the gate and lock horns with each other. It demonstrates a great theatrical struggle for dominance right off the bat, and is also one of the most versatile ways to start off any sequence. When you're in it, you and your opponent can move anywhere you want around the ring. And plus, almost any move you can think of is a quick nearby option. And what gives you the most opportunity here is that it is the ultimate communication hold. Unlike some holds that offer better communication coverage for one wrestler over another, this is an equal opportunity communication hold, where both wrestlers, especially if they have long hair, can talk all they want and really set the tone of the match and dictate exactly what they need the other guy to do. So my number one favorite move to start off any match, the collar and elbow tie-up. And that's my list, but what did you think? What are your favorite starting positions in pro wrestling? Let me know in the comments, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and also check me out on Patreon. I really do appreciate any support you have to give. Thank you for watching. This has been Dave Knows.